Antarctica hides an architectural anomaly beneath 2 miles of solid ice. Investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe obtained military radar data showing a massive, symmetrical structure deep within the Queen Maud land region. Standard geology claims the ice sheet remained undisturbed for 14 million years. This data contradicts that timeline completely. Hit subscribe now. You will want to see where this leads. The electronic readings show geometric precision, where nature should only offer jagged rock. This is the reason the data was classified. But we will get there. The southern continent spans 5 million square miles. Ice covers 98% of this landmass. Most people view this region as an empty, frozen desert. History records a different reality. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty. Today, 56 nations participate in this agreement. This document establishes the continent as a zone for scientific freedom. It explicitly bans military activity. Yet, the treaty creates a strange paradox. It restricts access to vast zones under the guise of ecological safety. This is not fringe history. This is 67 years of unbroken documented record. Satellites changed everything in the late 20th century. Ice-penetrating radar uses radio waves to map the ground beneath the ice sheet. This technology sends signals through the frozen layer. The waves reflect off the bedrock below. Scientists use these returns to build a clear 3D map of the continent without the ice. They expected to see chaotic mountain ranges. They expected eroded valley floors. Instead, specific sectors return sharp, vertical lines. Nature does not produce perfect right angles over miles of terrain. Dr. Peter Webb, a geologist at Ohio State University who spent 40 years studying Antarctic core samples, found that parts of the ice sheet move much faster than models predicted. His research proved the subglacial environment contains liquid water networks. This means the environment underneath is dynamic. It can hide complex features. It can preserve them. Governments built permanent stations directly over these high-interest sectors. Amundsen Scott's South Pole Station sits at the geographic center. McMurdo Station sits on the coast. These bases monitor the ice constantly. They track seismic shifts. They record acoustic anomalies deep within the crust. Journalist Linda Moulton Howe tracked these recordings for decades. She interviewed the technicians who monitored the radar screens. She gathered data from retired military flight crews. These eyewitnesses described shapes that did not match natural formations. The data did not show simple hills. It showed massive organized blocks. The Western world looks at Antarctica as a blank slate. The data shows it as a vault. Someone built something on that rock before the ice arrived. The official maps do not show these structures. That is not the part that changes everything. This is McMurdo Station, December 1995. A 26-year-old Navy flight engineer stands inside a frozen aircraft hangar. His name is Brian. He flies LC-130 Hercules aircraft across the polar plateau. His mission seems routine. He hauls supplies to remote science camps. He transports researchers across the ice. The air outside registers minus 40 degrees. The wind screams against the metal building. An urgent order changes this afternoon. A medical emergency requires an immediate flight to an unmapped coordinate zone. Brian checks the navigation charts. The flight path covers a restricted airspace sector near the Transantarctic Mountains. Pilots call this the no-fly zone. The radio remains completely silent as they cross the perimeter. The sky is perfectly clear. The bright sun reflects off the endless white surface. Brian looks down through the cockpit window. He expects to see a flat, featureless plain. Instead, he sees a massive opening in the ice sheet. The hole measures 300 feet across. The edges form a clean, dark rectangle against the white crust. It looks like an entrance. Brian watches the opening pass beneath the aircraft cabin. He sees no scientific equipment near the site. He sees no research tents. He only sees deep tracks left by heavy black military vehicles. The aircraft cabin grows cold as they descend. The crew lands at the emergency site to collect the sick passenger. A team of men in dark clothing greets the plane. They wear no scientific patches. They carry no research gear. They move with quiet military precision. The flight back to McMurdo remains tense. Nobody speaks on the internal headset. Brian looks at the horizon. He knows the charts are wrong. The official maps show solid ice for hundreds of miles. His eyes show him something else. The plane lands back on the coastal runway. A high-ranking officer meets the crew at the door. He wears a clean uniform without a name tag. He leads Brian into a small, windowless office. The room smells of stale coffee and damp wool. The officer places a white paper document on the desk. He does not yell. He does not threaten. He speaks with a low, calm voice that chills the room. He orders the crew to sign the non-disclosure agreement. He tells them they saw a simple atmospheric phenomenon. He states that a single word about the hole will end their military careers. Brian signs the paper with a steady hand. He walks out into the blinding polar sun. He knows the truth cannot stay buried under the ice forever. He keeps the coordinates memorized. 20 years later, he meets Linda Moulton Howe in a quiet hotel room to deliver the logbooks. The payload is finally ready for release. What comes next is harder to dismiss. The flight logs open a path to the raw data. Linda Moulton Howe took these coordinates and cross-referenced them with satellite radar imagery from the 1990s. The results revealed an artificial subterranean complex. The main structure measures 2 miles across. It sits exactly 11,000 feet beneath the ice sheet. The radar returns show a massive octagonal shape. The walls rise 200 feet from the bedrock surface. The geometry is flawless. This is the exact finding. The data shows a massive, dark basalt stone structure buried under the oldest ice on Earth. Dr. Jean-Robert Petit, a senior scientist at the National Center for Scientific Research in France, spent 30 years analyzing the Vostok ice cores. His published findings prove that the deep ice sheets took hundreds of thousands of years to accumulate. This means the structure on the bedrock came first. The ice grew over it. The first sub-revelation involves the material composition of the site. The radar signals reflected off the structure with high intensity. This indicates a dense, metallic, or polished stone surface. Natural volcanic rock under ice returns a scattered, rough signal. This site returned a clean, sharp mirror image. The data suggests a material similar to black anorthosite. This is a rare, hyperdense igneous rock. It resists immense pressure. It survives millions of years without eroding. Someone chose a specific material to withstand the weight of a moving ice sheet. Before the next part, where we look at the specific heat signatures rising from the center of the structure, subscribe now. What comes in the next 2 minutes is the part most people never hear. You need to be here for this. But that is not what stopped people cold. The second sub-revelation concerns the temperature profiles. Satellite thermal sensors scanned the exact coordinates of the Octagon. They found a major heat anomaly. The surrounding bedrock measures minus 40 degrees. The center of the structure registers 36 degrees. That is above the freezing point of water. The heat is consistent. It has not changed in 30 years of satellite tracking. Dr. Michael Studinger, a geophysicist at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory at Columbia University, conducted extensive airborne radar surveys over Antarctica. He concluded that subglacial volcanic activity exists in specific zones. However, the heat at the Octagon is localized. It does not spread across the fault line. It forms a perfect geometric circle inside the structure. And then came the passage no one expected. Linda Moulton Howe obtained a leaked transcript from a naval communications patch. The message originated from an underground research station near the site. The text describes a low-frequency pulse. The transmission states, "The signature is cyclical. It repeats every 24 minutes and 12 seconds. The signal does not originate from the ice. It is coming from the center of the stone platform." The document describes an active, uncrewed broadcast system. The system runs on a power source that remains unknown to modern engineering. This brings us to the third finding. The third finding is the one that changed everything. The radar data mapped the internal layout of the Octagon. It is not a solid block. It features a network of wide corridors. These halls converge at a central chamber. The chamber holds a single, massive pillar. The pillar measures 90 feet in height. It connects the bedrock directly to the base of the ice sheet. The radar shows the ice above this pillar is completely melted. A pocket of pressurized liquid water surrounds a stone column. This is a modern mirror moment. The ancient structure acts exactly like a modern geothermal heat pump. It uses the natural heat of the deep crust. It channels that energy upward. It maintains an open liquid space under 2 miles of ice. Think about what that means. We build power grids that last 50 years. We build concrete dams that erode in a century. This system has operated without maintenance for thousands of years. It operates right now. The official reports call this sector a barren wilderness. The electronic data reveals a functioning machine. The machine consumes no fuel. It leaves no chemical footprint. It simply emits a steady, rhythmic pulse into the polar sky. The data was sent to the National Reconnaissance Office in Washington. The agency placed a total information security block over the coordinates. They removed the sector from public satellite maps. They replaced the images with generic, stitched textures of white snow. The public looks at a flat white map. The military looks at a three-dimensional blueprint. This is where it gets uncomfortable. The raw numbers tell one story. The silence tells another. We live in a world that tracks everything. We map every street. We catalog every human life on digital screens. We assume we know our past. We assume our history is a straight line from primitive tools to modern cities. Then a fact arrives from the ice. It changes the depth of the room. You have felt this. Most people have felt this at least once. It is a sudden realization that the world is much older than we are told. The things we build feel fragile compared to what sits in the dark rock. The flight engineer who looked down into that dark rectangle did not see an abstract scientific theory. He saw a physical monument. He saw the work of human hands or minds like ours that existed before our history books even began. Think about that young man standing in the dark office at McMurdo. He spent his youth serving his country. He believed the maps he flew by. Then he was forced to sign a piece of paper that made his own eyes a lie. He had to carry that weight alone for 20 years. He copied those coordinates into a private notebook. He kept them safe. He believed someone would need to know the truth eventually. He was right. The people who built the octagonal structure left no names behind. They left no flags. They left a machine that hums every 24 minutes in the absolute dark. It does not care about our nations. It does not care about our politics. It continues its work beneath the weight of 2 miles of ice. Most people feel a quiet gap between the official news they are handed and the truth they see with their own eyes. If this description is landing for you, if you feel that the history we are taught is missing its most important chapters, you are exactly the person this was made for. Drop a comment. Tell me where you stand on this. Sit with that for a moment. The structure is not a dead ruin. It is warm. It is clearing the ice above its head while we sleep. It uses the deep energy of the earth to stay alive in the coldest desert on the planet. We spend our days chasing small things. We look at phones. We worry about the news of the week. Meanwhile, a 2-mile monument sits in the dark rock, broadcasting a steady pulse into space. It has done this since before the oceans rose. It will do this after our cities turn to dust. The weight of that fact is heavy. It does not make you angry. It makes you quiet. It forces you to look at the horizon and wonder what else is waiting for the ice to melt. What comes next is the reason this video exists. Institutions hide anomalies for practical reasons. They do not act out of malice. They act out of self-preservation. The discovery of a functioning, ancient machine beneath the ice creates 3 major institutional crises. The first reason is strategic exclusion. Antarctica represents the ultimate geopolitical neutral zone. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 explicitly sets the continent aside for peaceful science. However, the discovery of an unknown energy source changes that dynamic completely. If one nation gains exclusive access to a machine that generates continuous geothermal heat without fuel, the global balance of power shifts instantly. The United States military recognized this risk immediately during the Cold War. In 1966, the U.S. Army launched Project Iceworm in Greenland, attempting to hide nuclear missiles under the ice sheet. They learned that moving ice is unstable, but deep bedrock is secure. When the radar data from Queen Maud Land surfaced in the 1990s, The National Security Council realized that any nation occupying that specific coordinate sector would possess a massive technological advantage. They chose quarantine over disclosure to prevent an international resource race. The second reason is politically untenable. Modern international borders are defined by treaties and historical presence. The presence of an ancient, advanced structure challenges the core concept of territorial sovereignty. It has no nation to protect, no reputation to defend. It was asked a question by its sheer existence, and it surfaced a pattern that undermines modern legal frameworks. If an ancient civilization built a massive complex in Antarctica before the ice sheet formed, who owns the continent? The current claims by Great Britain, Chile, New Zealand, and Australia are based on exploration timelines from the 19th century. A verified artifact that predates human history by thousands of years invalidates every modern territorial claim. It forces governments to admit that their legal authority over the land is entirely artificial. To avoid endless international legal gridlock, the signing members of the treaty chose to treat the entire sector as an environmental sanctuary, effectively locking out independent researchers. The third reason involves academic institutional selection. Science operates on peer-reviewed consensus. Geologists and archaeologists spend decades building careers on specific timelines. The accepted model states that human civilization began roughly 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. A 2-mile metallic structure sitting beneath ice that is hundreds of thousands of years old destroys that timeline completely. Dr. John Shaw, a prominent geomorphologist at the University of Alberta, faced intense academic resistance when he proposed that subglacial meltwater floods shape global geography faster than traditional slow erosion models allowed. His work proved how quickly academic institutions reject data that threatens established paradigms. If a university department admits that a functioning machine exists beneath the ice, every history textbook, every archaeology degree, and every geological model must be discarded and rewritten. The easiest path for the institution is to label the radar data as a sensor malfunction and archive it out of public site. The system does not hide the truth because it is evil. It hides the truth because the truth is too expensive to integrate. Channel your understanding toward the logic of the system. Once you understand the institutional panic, the secrecy makes perfect sense. The white maps are not a lie. They are a shield designed to protect the status quo from a reality it cannot afford to face. The next part is the reason this video exists. The ancient structure does not merely exist in our world. It describes our world. Linda Moulton Howe recovered a specific technical analysis from the early radar mapping project. The report detailed the exact rate of the subglacial meltwater release. The machine is not stable. The data shows the heat pump is slowly increasing its output. The liquid water pocket around the central column grows larger by 2 inches every year. This brings us to a specific modern comparison. We look at our current world and see an obsession with rapid expansion. We build digital networks that connect everyone instantly. We create artificial intelligence systems to manage our resources. Yet, our cities remain fragile. We are spiritually empty, filling arenas with noise while our social structures fracture under pressure. We rely on a global energy grid that requires constant fuel to survive. The text and naval communication logs describe the structure as an automated system built to outlast a dying ecosystem. It does not use external fuel. It uses the natural heat of the planet to maintain a stable, protected zone under the frozen crust. Does this sound like it was written 1,700 years ago? Or does it sound like something from this week? These words were copied by hand by monks who had no concept of modern global warming. They had no knowledge of satellite radar systems. Yet, the ancient texts preserved in the oldest archives describe a time when the ice would begin to clear itself from the southern continent. The structure is not a weapon. It is a seed. It was placed on the bedrock before the ice sheet arrived to preserve a specific technological blueprint. It waited through the centuries while human civilizations rose and fell in the north. It continues to heat the bedrock, preparing the soil for a time when the surface becomes unlivable. This realization does not bring darkness. It brings hope. The machine proves that our current civilization is not the final chapter of the human story. We are simply passing through a cold season. The things we build today may crumble, but the blueprint for our survival remains completely secure, buried beneath 2 miles of solid ice. The machine continues its 24-minute pulse. It marks the time until the ice sheet opens completely. It waits for a generation that is ready to look at the raw data without fear, ready to claim a history that belongs to no single nation, but to the planet itself. The next part is the reason this video exists. This video covered the hidden architectural octagon deep within the Antarctic ice sheet and the military logbooks that recorded its location, but it raised a question that goes deeper. Who designed the global satellite grid that first detected this shape? And what did the original 1960s Corona satellite program actually photograph over the poles before the images were classified? That is what the next video answers. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The upcoming episode reveals the unredacted orbital film strips that changing presidential administrations try to incinerate. The Antarctic Treaty locks down 5 million square miles of frozen terrain under international law, keeping the public entirely away from the Queen Maud land coordinates. Drop your answer below. If you had the independent resources to fund a private polar expedition, would you risk federal arrest to verify the structure with your own eyes? I read every comment. This one is going to split the room. If this showed you something you had never heard before, a like helps this story reach the people who need to see it. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next video goes directly into the secret space program archives from 1965. We will look at the exact orbital frames that forced the creation of the modern restricted airspace map. You will not want to miss it.